But I think mostly when it comes to those kinks, fetishes, or like BDSM scenes, I would say it's more about like not necessarily like the orgasm as much as the release, which is orgasmic to a lot of people. You know, they will feel the adrenaline rush, they will feel the endorphins, which feels as much as a release as an orgasm to most people.
Oh, mic drop. That's so
Wait, dildo drop.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's chat, which is with therapist, sexologist, and host of Ask Carlos TV, Carlos. Carlos is going to school me on the world of kink. Let's go.
Hi, how are you? So good to meet you.
I know, it's so nice to meet you too. All right, so should we talk about kink?
You can talk about whatever you want. People don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know.
Yeah.
I love asking like sex workers and dominatrixes. I love asking them like or the people themselves. And I love asking like, so what is it that you like about it? Because people just don't know, you know? People don't know why they're into these things in particular. There's a lot of things that people do that aren't necessarily sexualized, but listen, people sexualize everything. You have like one camp of like the ABDL community, the basically adult babies who wear diapers. You know, they love to get into the headspace of being a baby, and sometimes they're referred to as a little, and they will have, for the most part, they will have someone who is like, you know, I guess what you would consider the traditional dominant, or their caregiver, or their daddy, whatever they refer to call them, and they have like a relationship, and you know, it's basically a role play, except it's like it's called H play too. So some people, there's one side that it's not sexual for them at all. It's more of a therapeutic thing, like they're reliving their childhood, or they just feel really comforted by it. And then you have a section that does you know, get it on in the diaper. They'll pull the diaper to the side and start banging, you know. Washing is another activity that is more common than one might think, you know. So splashing is essentially, it's also called like wet and messy fetish. It's people who love like different substances, usually it's food, being like thrown on them. They'll like cover themselves in it. I actually tried cake sitting on one of my videos. I talked about splashing, and I ended up making a penis-shaped cake for my birthday, and then I sat on it. And I mean, that wasn't sexual, but I was still participating in the kink.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, and it does feel interesting.
How do you decide, like, if it's the same act that someone's doing sitting on a cake, like you weren't doing it in a sexual way, like how would you describe the way that you were sitting on a penis-sized cake? Like,
I mean, I eventually found the sexual side of it. I was like, well, I'm here. I'm already here. I'm already sitting on this cake. I'm already covered in cake. It was like, I think at that point, it was like, it was late. It was like 3-4 in the morning. And so I was like, well, I might as well get the full experience. So I got off while covered in cake, you know? So it was hot. But I think mostly when it comes to those kinks, fetishes, or like BDSM scenes, I would say it's more about like, not necessarily like the orgasm as much as the release. That's because it's porn. So that's something that people are going to get off to, and it kind of adds to it. So when someone is getting off to a porn that's like a BDSM porn, even though in reality they might not get off to it, like it just kind of adds to it. 'Cause you know, at that moment, they're watching porn, they're trying to get off, you know?
Yeah.
But when it comes to actually participating in it, sometimes it has nothing to do with getting off. In particular, like someone who's asexual, even though they do orgasm, they do have, you know, they masturbate, they can have experience pleasure like everyone else. For a lot of people who are asexual, they love things like BDSM because it's another release and a way that you connect with someone without that whole like sexual, like I'm gonna bang you so hard. It was more like I'm gonna like flog you so hard or whatever they're into. For the most part, there's going to be a submissive and a dominant. Not necessarily in that what you would be thinking, but it's more of like someone giving and someone getting, so the person that's like receiving, like let's say they're getting whipped, they're getting whipped, someone is whipping them. What happens is, like, a lot of the times those endorphins, they will go into what is known as like a subspace, and it's kind of like a euphoric state where it's kind of like, it's almost like, I guess, being in an orgasmic state, but for longer periods of time. So they get to release from being in the here and the now, and they get to just like kind of disconnect in pleasure, I mean that painful pleasure, for a while. And same thing with someone who is providing that, maybe whatever tension they're holding on to, they're releasing it through it that way. That's why, like, when you were mentioning, sometimes when people are talking about BDSM, they think it's like about abuse, but that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's because they think it's abuse because a lot of the activities
right,
is
right,
painful.
pain, right, and that is not always the case. I think people forget about sensual dominance, so there's like, you would expect like the regular like dom, or like the dominatrix, dom daddy, whatever you're into. There's that way of, I think, when people think of like a dominant, they think that someone who's real forceful, and for many people that is. But there's also like a sensual dominance, and I think like a lot of people have already done it, they don't even know about it. But it's like when you grab your partner sensually, you maybe like blindfold them, push them down on the bed, and maybe like rub a feather around them. They are technically submitting to you at that moment,
Yeah.
so there is that element of the BDSM. Orgasms. Well, I love them. Let's get that out of the way. But I think it's up to each individual. I think everyone should be in charge of their own sexuality, of their relationships. You teach people the way that you want to be treated. You teach them, well, you should teach them how you want to be touched, how you want to be banged. Like, a person's orgasm is really their own responsibility. So if you want to have an orgasm, then you better make sure that you do what it takes to get your orgasm. You can't depend on someone else to give you an orgasm. Mm-hmm. And if you don't want an orgasm, which a lot of people don't, that's shocking too, but there's people out there who they just want to, like, extend the period of pleasure, like, and it can go along a lot of dimensions. So there's like the tantric sex, where kind of sex can go on for hours, and there's without a release, and that's still, they're finding some pleasure out of that. There's people who enjoy ruined orgasms, where they're about to come and someone like stops them. They enjoy that too. That is, they get off on not getting off. Same thing with chastity play, which is crazy popular, which is something that a lot of people wouldn't expect. Like, what? Like, there's people who actually like lock up their penises in chastity, and it's like, yeah, they enjoy that. That is something that they find. There's nothing more pleasurable than getting their cock locked up in chastity, or their useless clitty, depending on the kink.
Yeah, so is when you're locked up, is that so like it's when your penis isn't hard, and then so it's locked, so if it got hard it like would fit? Is that what it is?
You mean like the cage, or?
Yeah, like
so yeah, so with chastity, it's a device, so it's kind of like a cage. Sometimes it's kind of like a full like cover type thing, and you put it over the penis, and it comes with like a lock and a key, and you give the key over to your key holder, and then that key holder will decide when you get to be released and when you get to orgasm. So they're kind of like in control. So that's like one perfect example of someone who can have the pleasure and be really fulfilled in their sex life without the orgasm. They teach you amazing communication skills, because there's so much negotiation that goes on when you're talking about like consent and like creating a safe word, limits and boundaries to make sure that you're both on the same page and that no one gets hurt. But that is such a good quality to have, is to be able to open up with someone and say, hey, let's try this. This is really weird. Let's try it. And one of the things people are always asking me, like, what do men want? What do women want? Like, what do non-binaries want? Like, that's a form of that question I'm always getting asked, but the truth is people just want to be accepted for whatever it is that they're into without being judged or made fun of and stuff like that. And the strongest relationships are the ones where people feel like they can open up to the person that they're with and just try things. They
Yeah.
might not like it, but it's like that bonding experience of trying things, of going outside of your comfort zone and being able to open up with certain things that are, I guess, like filled with shame for most people, and kind of making that connection and knowing that you're exploring with things and learning that it's not as big of a deal as you really thought. Sometimes we do things to self-harm, to self-sabotage. And if you're engaging in something for those specific purposes, to self-sabotage, or you're trying to like hurt yourself in some way, then it's really important to figure out why you're doing that, because there's obviously something that you're avoiding that can be, you can find another release to it. If they know about it, that's great. But if they don't and they're engaging in something that's maybe like hurting themselves, usually like psychologically or even physically, then it's just kind of like understanding, okay, this is actually problematic. There's people who love cock and ball torture, they love it, but maybe, and they just do it for the fun of it. There's no like deep-seated reason. They just added once and they got onto it, so they just said, hey, I'll do it again. But for maybe someone else, maybe they feel like maybe someone made fun of them earlier in their life, or they made them feel like less of a man or something, and having that is just like a way to kind of keep that self-abuse going. So then it would be important to get that insight as to why you're doing certain things. In my certification, femdom, I did a video on femdom, and I interviewed an amazing dominatrix, mercenary mistress, and we talked about certification. It's usually like someone who identifies as male for the most part. I mean, that's for the most part it's that, so we'll stick to that in this particular topic for today. But they find the humiliation in being turned into a female, which becomes really problematic for someone who is a female and is the one in power. So we had kind of talked a little bit about how you can still engage in that kink and fetish while acknowledging that there are some problematic aspects to it, like like, oh, you look like such a girl, like it's a bad thing. So it's about just identifying what it is about a particular kink, and it can be anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be certification, but any kink that might be, have like those problematic overtones or undertones, finding a way to modify it. So maybe modifying that language. So like with sissification, instead of being made fun of for looking like a girl or acting like a girl or dressing like a girl, they are maybe like made fun of for being useless or for being less of a man or anything that is not equal to being a female. So with pet play, it doesn't necessarily have to be pups. That is really popular, but you can be like a kitten. Pony is another really popular one. Yeah, it's a role play type of activity. So essentially, it's like you're putting yourself into that headspace of a puppy or a cat or a pony or whatever. So if it's pup play in particular, you can have the pup hood to help. It's more like those things are more to help you get into that headspace, so yes, you can do it without it, but those things really help you get into that character. So you can put on the pup hood. They have like butt plugs with the little dog tail. They just like plop in, and basically just putting yourself into that headspace of like a puppy, so in that particular the relationship dynamic where the dominant is usually not a puppy. I mean, I guess they can, but it's usually not. And it's kind of like the way that you would envision the relationship between like people have with their dogs, when the dogs just comes, they're so excited to see you and they just want to please you. You just put yourself into that headspace and you're trying to please your partner. You like a little belly rub, you like all that stuff. It's essentially, it's a role play.
Because I think people get hung up on the fact that it's like an animal, and then like there's like all these associations with this, but that's not what what it's about. It's like about characterizing the
Exactly. Right. And sometimes it's just about the look, you know, maybe you just like the hood, like with the kitten play. If you just want to put a pair of cat ears and, you know, like crawl around and feel sexy. Strongly believe that sex education is not education unless you're talking about pleasure, you know? So whatever the definition is, we need to add pleasure up in this bitch.
Sex is not the same as love. Sex is one form of a physical interaction that should be consensual between all parties. It is an act that people can choose to participate in or not.
It's not necessary, like, it's not always physical, you know? There is this one fascinating I guess kink, financial domination, and I mean for that is like purely mental, and there's like no sex involved. Sometimes people don't even meet, you know, so that is like definitely like a mental thing. A lot of the times with the financial domination, the financial dominatrixes refer to themselves as goddesses. So it's like, you know, they're like, here's my tribute, goddess, because you're such a goddess. Let me give you $3,000 just for your attention. You don't need to give me sex. I just want to hear. You deserve it. I'm only getting pleasure out of being acknowledged by such a goddess.
But yeah, no, that's a really good point. So it's beyond just the physical when you have sex, and I think that's good because that's the way that we can make sure
right, like phone sex, cyber sex, you know, those are two forms of sex that literally have the sex in it, and there's no like physical thing to it. Sex is a consensual, intimate interaction that can provide physical, mental, or emotional pleasure and euphoric release.
I see, yeah. Really.
That kind of puts it all together without saying that it's pleasure, but it can provide physical, mental, emotional pleasure. Or what's another word for pleasure?
Or euphoric release, because that's...
Right. Oh, exactly, because it's an or. So you're not saying it is only the pleasure. It can be.
It should be or.
The euphoric release. Yes.
Yeah, thanks, Carlos.
You're welcome.
Everything to me so well and really opened up my eyes about the world of kink and all the different types of ways that people choose to orgasm or have euphoric release. And I couldn't recommend your channel more if anyone wants to learn more about kinks. And
yes, come my way. Or don't come if you're into chastity and orgasm denial, but just head my way then.